My husband of 7 years demanded that we split all the household bills because he said he wouldn't support a gold digger woman. Subscribe to the channel and like the video to see more stories like this. The words came out of Derek's mouth on a Tuesday evening while I was making dinner. Not during an argument, not after a fight, just casually, as if he was commenting on the weather. I was standing at the stove stirring pasta sauce when he walked into the kitchen, leaned against the counter with his arms crossed, and delivered that sentence like it was the most reasonable thing in the world. "I've been thinking," he said, his voice carrying that particular tone he used when he'd already made up his mind about something. "We need to split all the bills 50-50. I'm not going to keep supporting a gold digger." I stopped stirring. The wooden spoon hovered in the air as I processed what he'd just said. Gold digger. That's what he called me. After 7 years of marriage, after everything. "Excuse me?" I turned to face him slowly. Derek's jaw was set in that stubborn way I'd come to recognize over the years. His blue eyes, which had once looked at me with something resembling love, now held nothing but cold resentment. "You heard me, Caroline. I work hard for my money, and I'm tired of you living off me like some kind of parasite. From now on, we split everything down the middle. Rent, groceries, utilities, everything." My heart was pounding, but I kept my voice steady. "You think I'm living off you?" "I know you are," he said, picking up his phone and scrolling through it without even looking at me. "I've been tracking our expenses, and I'm paying for almost everything around here. Meanwhile, you're spending your salary on God knows what. Probably shoes and purses and whatever else women waste money on." I wanted to laugh. I wanted to scream. Instead, I turned off the stove and set down the spoon with deliberate care. "And you want to split the bills 50-50 starting when?" "Starting immediately." He finally looked up from his phone, and there was something almost triumphant in his expression, like he'd just won something. "I already made a spreadsheet. We'll each pay our fair share. It's only fair, right?" Fair. The word tasted bitter in my mouth. "Of course," I said, my voice perfectly calm. "That sounds very fair, Derek." He seemed surprised by my easy agreement. Maybe he'd expected me to cry or beg or throw the kind of tantrum that would confirm whatever story he'd been telling himself about me. Instead, I smiled. It wasn't a warm smile, but he didn't seem to notice. "Great," he said, looking relieved. "I'll email you the spreadsheet tonight. We can start with this month's bills." "Perfect," I replied, turning back to the stove. "Dinner will be ready in 10 minutes. Derek left the kitchen, probably to go back to his gaming setup in the spare bedroom where he spent most evenings. I heard his footsteps on the stairs, heard the door close, heard the familiar sounds of his video games starting up. I stood there in the kitchen, surrounded by the smell of the dinner I was making, and something inside me shifted. It wasn't anger, exactly. It was something colder, something more focused. My name is Caroline Brooks. I'm 35 years old, and I'm an accountant at a mid-sized consulting firm. I make a decent salary. Nothing extraordinary, but comfortable. Derek and I met when I was 28, fresh out of a long-term relationship that had ended badly. He was charming then, attentive, funny. He worked as a marketing coordinator and talked about his big plans for the future. We dated for a year before he proposed. The wedding was small, just close family and friends. Nothing extravagant, but meaningful. Or at least, I thought it was meaningful at the time. The first year of marriage was good. We were happy. Or I believed we were happy. Derek was affectionate. We went on weekend trips. We talked about buying a house someday and maybe having kids. I thought we were building a life together. But somewhere around year 2, things started to change. Derek's job wasn't going the way he'd hoped. He got passed over for a promotion he'd been counting on. Then he got passed over again. His frustration started bleeding into everything else. He became critical, moody, withdrawn. By year 3, he'd quit his marketing job and started doing freelance work from home. He said it was temporary, just until he found something better. The freelance work was sporadic, and his income became unreliable. I didn't mind picking up more of the expenses. That's what marriage is, right? Supporting each other through difficult times. By year 4, Derek had mostly stopped looking for traditional employment. He spent more time on his gaming setup, which had grown more elaborate and expensive. He joined online tournaments, talked about becoming a professional streamer. I supported that too, even though I privately thought it was unlikely to pay off. By year 5, I was paying for almost everything. The rent on our apartment, which had increased twice, the groceries, the utilities, the internet that Derek needed for his gaming, the car insurance, the health insurance, the countless small expenses that add up to a life. Derek's freelance work became less and less frequent. When he did get contracts, the money seemed to disappear quickly. He'd buy new gaming equipment, upgrade his computer, purchase subscriptions to various streaming platforms. When I gently suggested he might want to look for steady work, he'd get defensive, accuse me of not believing in him, of not understanding how hard he was working to build his brand. So I stopped suggesting it. I worked longer hours, took on extra projects, carefully managed our finances to make sure all the bills got paid. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself things would get better. They didn't get better. By year 6, Derek had developed a routine. He'd wake up around noon, eat whatever leftovers were in the fridge, then spend the rest of the day and most of the night gaming. Sometimes he'd stream, usually to an audience of about 12 people. Sometimes he'd just play. He'd come to bed around 3 or 4 in the morning, sleep until noon, and repeat. Meanwhile, I was up at 6:30 every morning, working 9-hour days at the office, coming home to cook dinner, clean the apartment, do the laundry, pay the bills, and try to maintain some semblance of a normal life. We stopped having sex somewhere in year 6. We stopped having real conversations even earlier than that. When I tried to talk to him about anything meaningful, his eyes would glaze over and he'd find an excuse to go back to his games. When I suggested couples counseling, he laughed and said we didn't need it, that I was being dramatic. I started feeling like a ghost in my own marriage, like I was just the person who paid for everything and kept the household running while Derek pursued his gaming dreams that were never quite going to materialize. And now, after 7 years of this slow erosion, after 7 years of supporting him while my own needs got smaller and smaller, he had the audacity to call me a gold digger. The pasta was done. I drained it mechanically, mixed in the sauce, portioned it onto 2 plates. I called upstairs that dinner was ready. Derek came down, grabbed his plate without looking at me, and went back to his gaming room. I sat alone at the kitchen table and ate my dinner in silence. That night, after Derek was fully absorbed in his games, I opened my laptop at the kitchen table. I pulled up my banking records, my credit card statements, my carefully maintained spreadsheets. I'd always been meticulous about tracking expenses. It's part of my nature as an accountant, but it's also something I'd learned to do early in our marriage when Derek's income became unreliable. I knew exactly how much I'd been paying for over the past 7 years. I knew it down to the dollar, but I'd never actually calculated the total before. I'd never added it all up and looked at the number as a whole. I'd been too busy just trying to keep us afloat, trying to maintain the illusion that we were a team, that we were partners sharing a life. Now, sitting in the dim light of the kitchen with my laptop screen glowing, I started doing the math. Rent. I'd been paying the full amount for the past 4 years. Before that, Derek had contributed sporadically, but it was never consistent. I calculated the total. Groceries, almost entirely me for the past 5 years. Utilities, all me for the past 4 years. Internet, all me, always, even though Derek used it constantly for his gaming and streaming. Car insurance, my car, but also Derek's car, which I'd started paying for when his freelance income became too unreliable. Health insurance. I'd added Derek to my employee plan when he quit his job. I'd been paying the extra premium for 3 years. Phone bills, both of our phones on my plan. The gaming equipment. This one made my blood pressure rise as I scrolled through my credit card statements. A new graphics card here, a professional microphone there, a gaming chair, upgraded monitors, a mechanical keyboard, LED lighting systems, thousands of dollars in equipment that Derek needed for his streaming career. Then there were the smaller things, the streaming subscriptions, the online tournament entry fees, the food delivery services Derek used when I was at work and he didn't feel like cooking, the random purchases that appeared on our credit cards month after month. I made a comprehensive spreadsheet, something that would make sense even to someone who wasn't an accountant. I categorized everything: essential bills, household expenses, Derek's gaming expenses, joint expenses, everything. The numbers grew and grew as I worked backward through 7 years of bank statements and credit card bills. By 2 in the morning, I had the final total: $68,423. That's how much more I had paid than Derek over the course of our marriage. That's how much of my hard-earned money had gone into supporting a man who now had the nerve to call me a gold digger. I sat back in my chair and stared at that number: $68,000. That was almost 2 years of my take-home salary. That was a down payment on a house. That was a new car with money left over. That was security, stability, a future. Instead, it had gone into keeping Derek comfortable while he pursued his fantasy of becoming a professional gamer. My email pinged. Derek had sent me the spreadsheet he'd promised, the one outlining how we were going to split bills fairly going forward. I opened it. It was laughably simple. Rent split 50-50, utilities split 50-50, groceries split 50-50. Everything neat and even, as if the past 7 years hadn't happened, as if we were starting from zero. There was no mention of the $68,000 I'd already contributed, no acknowledgement of the years I'd carried us, just a clean slate that benefited him entirely. I looked at his spreadsheet, then at mine. His was 1 page. Mine was 17 pages of meticulously documented evidence of financial abuse in a marriage where one person gave everything while the other took everything and called it fair. I didn't respond to his email that night. Instead, I started making copies of everything. I backed up my spreadsheets to 3 different cloud storage services. I downloaded PDFs of bank statements, I took screenshots of credit card records, I saved everything in multiple locations. Then I did something I'd been avoiding for a long time. I called my best friend Maya. It was 2:30 in the morning, but Maya answered on the 3rd ring, her voice groggy but immediately alert when she heard my tone. "Caroline, what's wrong?" "I need to tell you something," I said, "and I need you to not say I told you so." There was a pause. Maya had never liked Derek. Not really. She'd been polite about him, supportive of my marriage because she loved me, but I'd always known she had reservations. "Tell me," she said simply. I told her everything. The years of supporting Derek financially, his declining contributions, the gaming obsession, the way I'd slowly become invisible in my own marriage, and finally, what he'd said tonight about me being a gold digger. When I finished, Maya was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Caroline, that's financial abuse. You know that, right?" The words hit me like cold water. I've been calling it supporting my husband. You've been supporting a man who contributes nothing, treats you like an ATM, and then has the audacity to accuse you of being the problem, Maya said, her voice hard. That's not a marriage. That's exploitation. I know, I whispered. I think I've known for a while. I just didn't want to admit it. What are you going to do? I looked at my spreadsheets, at the documentation of 7 years of one-sided financial sacrifice. I'm going to give him exactly what he asked for, I said slowly. He wants to split bills 50-50? Fine. We'll split everything 50-50, including what he owes me for the past 7 years. Maya was quiet again, and then she laughed. It was a sharp, satisfied sound. Now that's the Caroline I remember. The one who graduated top of her class and took down that embezzling CFO at her old firm. What do you need from me? Tomorrow? Can you help me find a divorce lawyer? I already have 3 names for you, Maya said. I'll text them in the morning. We talked for another hour, Maya helping me think through next steps, reminding me of my own strength, telling me stories about women she knew who'd left bad marriages and built better lives. By the time we hung up, I felt clear-headed and determined. I went upstairs around 4 in the morning. Derek was still gaming, his headset on, yelling at teammates about some strategy. I stood in the doorway of his gaming room for a moment, watching him. This was my husband. This was the man I'd promised to love and honor. This was the man who'd looked me in the eye tonight and called me a gold digger while sitting in a room filled with thousands of dollars of equipment I'd paid for, in an apartment I'd been paying for, eating food I'd bought. He didn't even notice me standing there. I went to bed alone, as I had for most of the past 2 years. But for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel sad about it. I felt nothing, and that nothing felt like freedom. The next morning, I got up at my usual time. I made coffee, got dressed for work, packed my lunch. Derek was asleep, as always. I left without waking him. At work, between meetings, I called all 3 lawyers Maya had recommended. The first 2 couldn't see me for weeks. The third, a woman named Patricia Morrison, had a cancellation and could meet me that same evening. Bring all your financial documentation, she said when I explained my situation briefly. Bank statements, credit card records, anything showing income and expenses for both of you. The more detailed, the better. I have spreadsheets, I told her. Very detailed spreadsheets. Perfect, Patricia said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. I'll see you at 6. Patricia Morrison's office was on the 15th floor of a building downtown. The waiting room had that particular smell of expensive furniture and old law books. I sat with my laptop bag on my knees, my carefully organized folders of financial documents beside me, and waited. At exactly 6 o'clock, a woman in her late 40s emerged from an inner office. She had steel gray hair pulled back in a neat bun, and sharp brown eyes that seemed to assess me in seconds. Caroline Brooks? She extended her hand. I'm Patricia. Come in. Her office was lined with law books and framed degrees. She gestured to a chair across from her desk and settled into her own seat, opening a notepad. Tell me everything, she said simply. I did. I started from the beginning, from meeting Derek, from the good first year, from the slow decline. I told her about his job loss, his gaming obsession, how I'd gradually taken on more and more of the financial burden. I told her about last night, about him calling me a gold digger and demanding we split bills 50-50. Patricia's expression didn't change throughout my story, but her pen moved constantly across her notepad. When I finished, she looked up. You mentioned you have documentation? I opened my laptop and pulled up my spreadsheets. Then I walked her through everything. 7 years of financial records, categorized and color-coded, income for both of us, expenses paid by me, the rare expenses Derek had covered, the growing gap between what each of us contributed. Patricia studied the spreadsheet in silence, scrolling through page after page of data. When she reached the final total, $68,423, she leaned back in her chair. This is excellent work, she said. Meticulous. I've had clients who were professional accountants with less detailed records than this. I am a professional accountant, I said quietly. She smiled, and it was the smile of someone who'd just been handed a winning hand. Even better. Caroline, what you've documented here is a clear pattern of financial abuse within your marriage. Your husband has been essentially living off your income while contributing virtually nothing to the household. Hearing someone else say it, someone objective and professional, made something loosen in my chest. So I'm not crazy. I'm not being unreasonable. You're not crazy, and you're not being unreasonable, Patricia said firmly. In fact, you're being far more reasonable than most people would be in your situation. Many of my clients come to me emotional and unprepared. You've come with evidence that would make any judge's job very easy. What happens now? I asked. Now we talk about what you want. Do you want to try to save this marriage, or are we filing for divorce? I thought about Derek, asleep in our apartment right now, probably sleeping until noon again. I thought about 7 years of feeling invisible, of working myself to exhaustion while he played games, of being called a gold digger by a man who'd contributed almost nothing to our life together. Divorce, I said, and the word felt right. Final, but right. Patricia nodded. Then here's what we're going to do. We'll file for divorce citing irreconcilable differences. We'll request equitable distribution of marital assets and debts. And we're going to present your documentation showing the severe financial imbalance in your marriage. Can I get back what I paid? I asked. Technically, money spent during a marriage is considered marital spending, Patricia explained. However, given the extreme disparity here and the fact that your husband essentially coerced you into supporting him, while he pursued a hobby rather than gainful employment, we have a strong argument for you to receive the majority of any shared assets and for him to be responsible for his own debts going forward. She paused, studying me. I'm going to be honest with you, Caroline. You're not going to get a check for $68,000 from your husband. He doesn't have it, and a judge can't make money appear. But what we can do is ensure that in the divorce settlement, you're protected, you get what you're entitled to, and he doesn't walk away from this marriage with anything he didn't earn. That's all I want, I said. I just want out, and I want to make sure he understands exactly what he's losing. Then let's make that happen, Patricia said. She pulled out a retainer agreement and explained her fees. I signed it right there, using money from my personal savings account, the one Derek didn't have access to. When I left her office an hour later, the divorce process was officially beginning. Patricia would file the papers by the end of the week. In the meantime, she advised me to start documenting everything to avoid confrontation with Derek, and to consider where I might want to live once the divorce was underway. I drove home in a strange daze. 7 years of my life were ending. The marriage I'd believed in, worked for, sacrificed for, was over. I thought I'd feel sad. Instead, I felt lighter with each mile. Derek was awake when I got home, sitting in the living room with takeout containers scattered around him. Chinese food from the expensive place downtown, paid for with our joint credit card, no doubt. Where were you? He asked, not looking up from his phone. Working late, I said. It wasn't exactly a lie. Filing for divorce was work. Oh, he gestured to the takeout containers. I got dinner, didn't know when you'd be back. I looked at the containers. Enough food for 3 people, most of it eaten. That's fine. I'm not hungry. I went upstairs, changed into comfortable clothes, and sat on the bed with my laptop. I needed to start looking for apartments, somewhere I could afford on my own salary. Somewhere that would be mine and only mine. My phone buzzed. It was Maya. How did it go? She texted. Papers will be filed by end of week. I replied. Good. Proud of you. Need company? Not tonight. But thank you. Here when you need me. Love you. Love you too. I spent the next 2 hours looking at apartment listings. Nothing too expensive. Nothing extravagant. Just a clean 1-bedroom in a decent neighborhood with parking and in-unit laundry. Something manageable on my salary without having to support another adult who contributed nothing. Around 11, Derek came upstairs. He stripped down to his boxers and climbed into bed beside me without a word. Within minutes, he was snoring. I looked at him in the dark. This stranger I'd married, this person I'd built my life around. When had he become someone I didn't recognize? Or had I just been too busy paying the bills to notice? The next morning, I woke up before Derek again. This time, though, I took my laptop to work with me. During my lunch break, I transferred money from our joint savings account into my personal account. Not all of it, just my fair share. The account had about $12,000 in it, money I'd deposited over the past year. I transferred $6,000 into my personal account and left the rest for Derek. I also went to the bank and had my name removed from our joint credit card as an authorized payer. The credit card was actually in Derek's name, something from before we were married. I'd just been paying the bills for it for years. Now the responsibility was back on him. Then I opened a new credit card in my name only and set up automatic payments for my actual necessary expenses. My car payment, my car insurance, my phone bill. When I got home that evening, Derek was at his computer, but he turned when I walked in. Did you transfer money out of our savings? He asked, his tone accusatory. I transferred my half, I said calmly, setting down my purse. You wanted to split things 50-50, remember? His jaw tightened. That money was for emergencies, and I might have an emergency. So I took my share. You can't just do that without discussing it with me first. I turned to face him fully. Why not? You decided we were splitting all expenses without discussing it with me. You called me a gold digger without discussing it with me. I'm just following the same rules you established. Derek stood up, his face flushing. This is different. That's our money. No, Derek, half of it is your money and half of it is my money. And I took my half. He opened his mouth to argue, then seemed to struggle for words. Finally, he said, fine, whatever. But you're still paying your half of this month's rent, right? It's due in 3 days. I'll pay my half, I agreed. Will you be paying yours? Of course, he snapped. Great, I said, and went upstairs to change. That night, I made dinner for myself. Just enough for one. When Derek came down looking for food, he found me eating alone at the table. Where's mine? He asked. I made enough for me, I said. We're splitting things 50-50 now, remember? That includes groceries and cooking. I paid for my food and cooked my portion. You're responsible for yours. Derek stared at me like I'd grown a second head. Are you serious right now? Completely serious. You said you didn't want to support a gold digger. So I'm not going to dig for your gold anymore. You're on your own. He grabbed his phone and ordered delivery again. I watched him do it, watched him spend money he barely had, and said nothing. The pattern continued for the next few days. I cooked for myself, cleaned up after myself, did my own laundry. Derek's dirty clothes started piling up in the bedroom. Dishes accumulated in the sink. The apartment, which I'd been maintaining single-handedly for years, started to show the effects of Derek's learned helplessness. On Thursday evening, 4 days after my meeting with Patricia, I came home to find Derek in a panic. He was surrounded by papers at the kitchen table, his laptop open, his expression frantic. The rent is due tomorrow, he said when I walked in. My half is $1,000. $1,200. Our rent was $2,400 a month. I'd been paying all of it for years. Okay, I said calmly. Are you unable to pay it? I don't have it, he said, and there was something almost pleading in his voice. My freelance payment doesn't come through until next week. That's unfortunate, I said, but you said we were splitting everything 50-50. My half is ready to go. Is there a problem? Derek ran his hands through his hair. Caroline, come on. You know I don't have consistent income right now. Can't you just cover it this month and I'll pay you back? Like you paid me back the last 4 years? I asked pleasantly. He flinched. That's not fair. I've been building my streaming career. That takes time. And I've been building my savings account. That takes money. Money I don't want to spend covering your half of the rent. So what? You're just going to let us get evicted? I pulled out my phone and showed him a screenshot of my transfer to the landlord. I paid my half this morning. Whether we get evicted depends entirely on whether you pay yours. Derek's face went from red to pale. You're blowing up our marriage over money? You called me a gold digger over money, I replied. I'm just taking you at your word. You said you wanted things split fairly. This is fair, Derek. This is you experiencing what it would actually be like if we split everything 50-50. I can't believe you're doing this. His voice was shaking now. I can't believe it took me 7 years to do this, I said, and went upstairs. I heard him on the phone a few minutes later, his voice low and urgent, calling his mother, probably, or his brother, asking for money to cover his half of the rent. I felt nothing about it. No guilt, no satisfaction, just a flat, calm certainty that I was done being his safety net. The next day, Friday, Patricia called me at work. The divorce papers have been filed, she said. A process server will deliver them to your husband either today or Monday. I wanted to give you a heads up. My heart started racing. Okay, should I be there when it happens? That's up to you. Some clients prefer to be present, some prefer to be elsewhere. What matters is that you're safe. Does he have any history of violence? No, I said. He's never been violent, just entitled. Then I'd suggest you not be home when the papers are served. Give him time to process before you have to face him. Do you have somewhere you can stay for a few days? Yes, I said, thinking of Maya's spare bedroom. Good. Pack a bag with essentials, important documents, medications, anything you'd need for a week away. Do it before the papers are served, if possible. That evening, while Derek was absorbed in his games, I quietly packed a suitcase. Clothes, toiletries, my laptop, all my financial documents, my passport, my birth certificate, everything that mattered. I told Derek I was staying at Maya's for the weekend to help her with a project. He barely looked up from his screen. Okay, have fun. I loaded my car with my suitcase and drove to Maya's apartment. She opened the door, took one look at my face, and pulled me into a hug. The papers are being served, I said into her shoulder. Probably this weekend. Good, Maya said fiercely. It's about damn time. That night, Maya and I ordered pizza and watched old movies. It felt surreal. This normalcy in the middle of everything falling apart. But it also felt right, being with someone who actually cared about me, who wanted to know how I was feeling, who didn't treat me like an ATM. On Saturday morning, my phone started ringing. Derek. I let it go to voicemail. He called again and again. By noon, I had 7 missed calls from him and a string of increasingly frantic text messages. Caroline, where are you? Some guy just delivered papers. Divorce papers. This is a joke, right? Call me back now. Are you seriously divorcing me over rent? We need to talk about this. Caroline, this isn't funny anymore. You can't just throw away 7 years over nothing. I showed the messages to Maya. She read them and snorted. Over nothing? You've been supporting him for years and he calls it nothing? That's Derek, I said. His problems are important. Mine are nothing. My phone rang again. This time, it was Derek's mother, Linda. I answered. Caroline, she said, her voice tight. What is this nonsense about divorce? Derek is beside himself. It's not nonsense, Linda. I've filed for divorce. Over what? Derek told me you two had a small disagreement about money. But divorce? That seems extreme. Of course that's how Derek had framed it. A small disagreement. It's not about one disagreement, I said carefully. It's about 7 years of patterns that I can't continue living with. Marriage is work, Caroline. You don't just give up when things get hard. I've been working at this marriage for 7 years, Linda. I'm not the one who gave up. I'm the one who finally stopped trying to carry it alone. I don't understand, she said, and she actually sounded confused. Derek says you're upset about splitting bills, but isn't that what married couples do? Share expenses? Yes, I agreed. Married couples share expenses. They've been shared for 7 years. Derek just didn't realize that shared meant I was paying for almost everything while he gamed. There was a long silence. What do you mean, almost everything? I almost laughed. Derek hadn't told her. He'd called her for money to cover his rent, but hadn't explained why he needed it. Ask your son how much he's contributed to our household in the past 4 years, I said. Ask him about his freelance income versus his gaming equipment purchases. Ask him who's been paying the rent, the utilities, the groceries, his car insurance. Then ask yourself if you'd want your daughter to stay in a marriage like that. Another silence, then quietly. I didn't know. Most people didn't. I didn't advertise it. But now Derek wants to split everything fairly, and he's discovering what fair actually looks like. Linda didn't know what to say to that. We ended the call awkwardly. with her saying she'd talk to Derek. The rest of the weekend passed in a blur of phone calls from Derek that I didn't answer, and text messages that ranged from angry to pleading to accusatory. By Sunday night, he'd cycled through every emotion and settled on bargaining. Please come home so we can talk about this like adults. I'll go to counseling. I'll get a job. Whatever you want. Don't throw away our marriage without at least giving me a chance to fix things. I read the messages and felt nothing. These were the things I'd wanted to hear for years. The acknowledgement, the willingness to change, the effort. But they were only coming now, when he was facing consequences. Not when I was quietly drowning under the weight of supporting us both. Too little, too late. On Monday morning, I went to work as usual. Patricia called me during lunch. Your husband's attorney contacted me, she said. He wants to negotiate. Already? He's motivated. Apparently, he can't afford the apartment on his own, doesn't have money for a lawyer for extended proceedings, and is realizing how much you were actually contributing to the household. What does he want? I asked. He wants to reconcile. Failing that, he wants a quick, amicable divorce where you don't pursue any of the financial claims I outlined in our initial filing. I felt a cold smile cross my face. Tell his lawyer that I'm willing to have a conversation, in person, with you present, this Wednesday evening. Are you sure? Patricia asked. You don't owe him a conversation. I know, I said, but I want him to hear some things, and I want him to hear them with lawyers present so there's no ambiguity later. All right, Patricia said. I'll set it up. Wednesday evening arrived with unseasonable rain. I met Patricia at her office an hour before Derek was scheduled to arrive. She'd set up the conference room with a long table, chairs on either side, and a box of tissues that I found oddly funny, as if tissues would fix anything. Remember, Patricia said as we waited, you don't have to engage emotionally. This is a business meeting. We're here to discuss the terms of dissolving your marriage, nothing more. I understand, I said. I'd worn my best work suit, the navy one that made me look competent and professional. I'd styled my hair, done my makeup carefully. I wanted Derek to see exactly what he was losing, a woman who had her life together, who didn't need him, who was walking away with her dignity intact. Derek arrived at exactly 6 o'clock, accompanied by a lawyer who looked barely out of law school. The young man, who introduced himself as Brandon Chen, seemed nervous. Derek, on the other hand, looked terrible. His hair was unwashed, his clothes wrinkled, his eyes bloodshot. He'd probably been gaming all night instead of sleeping, a habit I knew well. When Derek saw me, something flickered across his face. Hope, maybe, or desperation. Caroline, he started, but Patricia cut him off smoothly. Let's all have a seat. This is a preliminary meeting to discuss possible terms for an amicable divorce. Mr. Brooks, you're here with representation, which is good. Let's keep this professional. We all sat. Derek kept trying to catch my eye, but I focused on Patricia and Brandon. My client, Brandon began, clearing his throat, would like to explore the possibility of reconciliation. He believes that with counseling and renewed commitment from both parties, the marriage can be saved. My client, Patricia replied calmly, has made her decision. She's filing for divorce. That's not negotiable. What we're here to discuss is how to make this divorce as painless as possible for both parties. Derek leaned forward, ignoring his lawyer. Caroline, please, can we just talk? Just you and me, without the lawyers? No, I said simply. It was the first word I'd spoken directly to him since he'd called me a gold digger, and my voice was steady and cold. He flinched as if I'd slapped him. I don't understand. We've been together 7 years. We can work through this. I know I made a mistake with what I said, but we don't have to blow up our whole marriage over it. This isn't about what you said last Tuesday, I replied, still maintaining eye contact. This is about what you've done for the past 7 years. I haven't done anything. Derek's voice rose. We've had a good marriage. We've been happy. Have we? I asked. Have we really been happy, Derek? Or have I been working myself to exhaustion while you played video games and lived off my income? That's not fair, he protested. I've been trying to build a career. Streaming takes time. 7 years? I asked. You need 7 years to build a streaming career that still only gets you 12 viewers on a good day? Brandon held up a hand. Perhaps we should focus on the practical matters. Mr. Brooks is willing to agree to a quick divorce if certain financial arrangements can be made. What kind of arrangements? Patricia asked, though I could tell from her tone that she already knew. My client requests that Mrs. Brooks continue to cover the rent on their current apartment for 3 months while he transitions to new living arrangements, Brandon said, reading from a notepad. He also requests that the joint savings account be split 50-50 and that Mrs. Brooks assume responsibility for the joint credit card debt. I actually laughed. I couldn't help it. The sound came out sharp and incredulous. Patricia's expression didn't change, but her voice took on an edge. Let me make sure I understand. Your client wants my client to pay his rent for 3 months, split savings that she exclusively funded, and take on credit card debt that was used primarily for his expenses? The credit card is in his name, Brandon said weakly, and has been paid by my client for the past 4 years, Patricia countered. She pulled out a folder and slid it across the table. These are financial records showing exactly what each party has contributed to this marriage over the past 7 years. I suggest you review them before making further requests. Brandon opened the folder, and I watched his expression change as he flipped through my meticulously documented spreadsheets. Derek leaned over to look, his face paling as he saw the numbers laid out in black and white. This says, says. Brandon swallowed. This says Mrs. Brooks has paid over $68,000 more than Mr. Brooks during their marriage. Correct, Patricia said crisply. My client has documented every expense. Rent, utilities, groceries, insurance, car payments, household supplies, and yes, even the gaming equipment Mr. Brooks claimed was necessary for his career. Derek was staring at the papers, his mouth slightly open. I didn't realize it was this much. You didn't realize, I said slowly, because you never asked. You never looked at our bank accounts. You never wondered how the bills got paid. You just assumed that money appeared magically to support your lifestyle while you pursued your gaming dream. I was contributing, Derek said, but his voice had lost its conviction. According to these records, Brandon said, still flipping through pages, Mr. Brooks's total financial contribution over the past 4 years amounts to approximately $8,000 in sporadic freelance payments, most of which were immediately spent on gaming equipment. I needed that equipment, Derek said weakly. You needed a $1,200 gaming chair? I asked. You needed a $4,000 computer upgrade? You needed a $300 microphone that you used maybe 20 times? You're making me sound like some kind of leech, Derek said, and there was anger creeping into his voice now. I'm stating facts, I replied. These are your purchases, Derek, your expenses that I paid for, while you called me a gold digger. The room went silent. Even Brandon looked uncomfortable. Finally, Patricia spoke. Here's what my client is willing to offer. A quick, no-fault divorce. All joint savings split 50-50, which means she keeps what she transferred to her personal account, and he keeps what remains in the joint account. He keeps his car, she keeps hers. They each take their personal belongings. She pays no rent for him, assumes no responsibility for his credit cards, and expects no repayment for the money she's already contributed to the marriage. That's generous, Brandon said, reading between the lines, given the financial disparity. It's more than generous, Patricia agreed, because the alternative is that we go to court, present all of this documentation, and request that the judge order equitable distribution based on actual contributions, in which case Mr. Brooks would likely end up owing my client a substantial amount, or she would be awarded the majority of all marital assets. Derek was shaking his head. You're really doing this. You're really walking away. Yes, I said simply. What am I supposed to do? His voice cracked. I can't afford that apartment alone. I don't have anywhere to go. You're 33 years old, I said. Figure it out. Get a job. Get a roommate. Move in with your mother. Those are your options. They're not my problem anymore. I thought you loved me, Derek said, and there were actual tears in his eyes now. The old Caroline, the one who'd spent 7 years trying to make this marriage work, felt a twinge of something. But the new Caroline, the one who'd been called a gold digger after years of sacrifice, felt nothing but cold resolve. I did love you, I said. I loved you enough to support you for years. I loved you enough to work overtime to pay our bills while you played games. I loved you enough to sacrifice my own financial security for your dream. But you know what? Love isn't supposed to be one-sided. Love isn't supposed to be exhausting. And love definitely isn't calling your partner a gold digger when they've given you everything. Derek put his head in his hands. Brandon looked at his client with something resembling pity, then turned to Patricia. Can we have a few minutes alone to discuss? Of course, Patricia said. We'll wait in my office. In Patricia's office, I sat down heavily. My hands were shaking slightly, the adrenaline of confrontation finally hitting me. You did well, Patricia said, handing me a bottle of water. Very well. You stayed calm, stated facts, didn't get drawn into emotional arguments. I almost felt sorry for him, I admitted, for just a second when he cried. That's normal. You spent 7 years caring about this man. Those feelings don't disappear overnight, but feeling sorry for someone doesn't mean you should stay married to them, especially when they've taken advantage of you for years. We waited about 20 minutes before Brandon knocked on the door. We're ready to talk. Back in the conference room, Derek's eyes were red but dry. He looked defeated, diminished. My client accepts the terms, Brandon said quietly. Quick divorce. Split the remaining joint savings. Each keeps their own vehicle and personal belongings. No rent support, no credit card assumption. Smart choice, Patricia said. She pulled out documents she'd clearly prepared in advance. These are the preliminary agreements. Both parties should review carefully before signing. We can file the divorce petition immediately and have this finalized within 60 days, assuming no complications. Derek signed without reading. His hand shook as he wrote his name. When it was done, Brandon gathered his papers quickly, clearly eager to leave. Derek stood slowly, looked at me one more time. I'm sorry, he said. I know it doesn't matter now, but I'm sorry. You deserved better than what I gave you. It was the first genuine thing he'd said all evening. I nodded once, acknowledging it, but didn't respond. After they left, Patricia turned to me. How are you feeling? Relieved, I said honestly. Is that terrible? It's honest. You're allowed to feel relieved. You're allowed to feel whatever you feel. I drove back to Maya's apartment in the rain, my windshield wipers beating a steady rhythm. When I walked in, Maya took one look at my face and opened her arms. I walked into the hug and finally let myself cry. Not for Derek, not for the marriage, but for the 7 years I'd lost, for the version of myself who'd thought that love meant endless sacrifice, for all the times I'd made myself smaller to accommodate someone who never appreciated it. It's done, I told Maya when I could speak again. The papers are signed. In 60 days, I'll be divorced. Good, Maya said fiercely. Now we can start planning your actual life. life, the one where you're not supporting a man-child. Over the next few weeks, I moved through the divorce process with mechanical efficiency. I found an apartment, a small one-bedroom with good natural light and in-unit laundry. The rent was $800 a month, easily manageable on my salary alone. I filled out change of address forms. I bought furniture, nothing expensive, just clean and functional pieces from IKEA. I set up utilities in my name only. I slowly built a space that was entirely mine. Derek texted occasionally, usually late at night, usually saying things he should have said years ago. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. The divorce was finalized on a Tuesday in July, exactly 62 days after I'd first filed. I took the afternoon off work to attend the brief court hearing. Derek wasn't there. He'd waived his right to appear, and his lawyer had submitted everything in writing. The judge reviewed the settlement, asked me a few standard questions about whether I'd signed voluntarily and understood the terms, then signed the decree. "Your marriage is dissolved," she said matter-of-factly. "Good luck, Ms. Brooks." I walked out of the courthouse a single woman for the first time in 7 years. The sun was shining. The air smelled like summer. I felt light enough to float. Maya had taken the afternoon off too, and she was waiting in the parking lot. "How does freedom feel?" she asked when I reached her car. "Like the beginning of something," I said. That night, Maya threw a small divorce party at her apartment. Just a few close friends, pizza, cheap wine, and a cake that said, "Congratulations on your divorce," in cheerful frosting letters. We laughed until our sides hurt, shared stories about terrible exes, and made toasts to new beginnings. Around midnight, after everyone else had left, Maya and I sat on her balcony looking out at the city lights. "Can I ask you something?" Maya said. "Do you regret any of it? The marriage, the years?" I thought about it carefully. I regret that I wasted so much time on someone who didn't value me, but I don't regret learning the lesson. I know now what I won't accept. I know what I'm worth. I know that I can support myself, that I'm strong enough to walk away when something isn't serving me. Those are valuable lessons, even if they cost me 7 years and $68,000 to learn them. "That's a very expensive education," Maya observed, "but a thorough one," I replied. 3 months after my divorce was finalized, I was settling into my new life. My apartment felt like home. I'd painted the bedroom a soft blue, hung artwork that I actually liked instead of Derek's gaming posters, bought plants that I actually remembered to water. Work was going well. Without the constant stress of supporting Derek, I had energy to focus on my career again. I'd taken on a major project that had gotten me noticed by senior partners. I'd started going to the gym, not to change my body, but just to feel strong. I'd reconnected with old friends I'd neglected during my marriage. I'd even gone on a few dates. Nothing serious, just testing the waters of being single again. One Saturday morning, I was at a coffee shop near my apartment, working on some freelance accounting I'd taken on to rebuild my savings. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Caroline, it's Derek. I know I shouldn't contact you, but I needed to tell you something. I got a job, a real job, not freelance. Office work, steady salary, benefits. I moved in with roommates. I'm going to counseling. I'm trying to become the person I should have been when we were married. I'm not telling you this to get back together. I know that's over. I just wanted you to know that I heard everything you said. You were right about all of it. I'm sorry it took losing you for me to figure it out." I read the text twice. It was what I'd wanted to hear for years. Derek taking responsibility, making changes, becoming a functional adult. But I felt nothing except a mild satisfaction that he was finally sorting out his life. Not for me, but for whoever he ended up with next. I didn't respond to the text. There was nothing to say. I was busy building my own life, one where I didn't have to support anyone but myself, where I could make decisions based on what I wanted instead of what someone else needed from me. I deleted the message and went back to my coffee and my work. The autumn sun streaming through the coffee shop windows. My future spread out before me like an open road, and for the first time in years, I felt genuinely, completely happy. 6 months after my divorce, I was thriving in ways I hadn't imagined possible. My savings account, which had been constantly drained during my marriage, was growing steadily. I'd been promoted at work to senior accountant, with a salary increase that felt like validation of all those years I'd worked overtime. My apartment had become a sanctuary, decorated exactly how I wanted, filled with things that brought me joy. But the universe, it seemed, wasn't done with Derek and me yet. It was a Friday evening in late November when everything came to a head. I was at an upscale restaurant downtown, celebrating my promotion with a group of colleagues. We'd chosen Marcello's, an Italian place known for its excellent wine list and even better pasta. I was laughing at something my coworker Jennifer had said when I heard a familiar voice behind me. "Caroline?" I turned, and there was Derek's mother, Linda. She was with Derek's father, Tom, whom I'd always liked despite his son's failures. They were dressed for dinner, clearly about to be seated. "Linda, Tom," I said politely, standing to greet them. "How are you?" Linda's eyes were cold. "We're fine. I'm surprised to see you out celebrating. I would have thought you'd feel some remorse." The air at our table went still. My colleagues, who knew the bare bones of my divorce story, were suddenly paying close attention. "Remorse for what?" I asked, keeping my voice level. "For destroying our son's life," Linda said, her voice rising slightly. "He lost everything because of you. His home, his confidence, his future." Tom put a hand on his his wife's arm. Linda, this isn't the place. No, I think it is the place, Linda continued, shaking off her husband's hand. I think everyone should know what kind of person Caroline really is. The kind who throws away a marriage over money. The kind who kicks a man when he's down. I felt my colleague's eyes on me, felt the attention of nearby tables turning toward us. The old Caroline would have been mortified, would have tried to smooth things over, would have made herself small to avoid a scene. The new Caroline was done shrinking. You want to have this conversation here? I asked quietly. In front of all these people? Are you sure, Linda? I'm sure, she said, her chin raised. You owe our family an explanation for what you did. All right, I said. I turned to my colleagues. Excuse me for a moment. This won't take long. I gestured to a quieter corner of the restaurant near the waiting area. Linda followed, with Tom trailing behind, looking uncomfortable. Once we were away from the tables, I turned to face them both. You want to know why I divorced Derek? I'll tell you exactly why. He made one comment about splitting bills, Linda started, but I cut her off. He called me a gold digger after I'd been supporting him financially for 7 years. 7 years, Linda. Do you know how much money I put into that marriage while Derek sat at home gaming and occasionally picking up freelance work that barely covered his equipment upgrades? Linda's expression faltered slightly, but she pressed on. He was building a career. These things take time. $68,423, I said clearly. That's how much more I contributed than Derek during our marriage. I have spreadsheets documenting every expense. Rent, utilities, groceries, car insurance, health insurance, his gaming equipment, all of it. I can show them to you right now if you'd like. Tom's face had gone pale. $68,000, I confirmed. I was working 9-hour days while Derek slept until noon and gamed until 4 in the morning. I was paying all our bills while he bought $1,200 gaming chairs and $4,000 computer upgrades. I was keeping us afloat while he pursued a streaming career that never earned more than about $50 a month. He never told us, Tom said quietly. Of course he didn't, I replied, because that would mean admitting that he'd been living off his wife's income while contributing almost nothing. It's easier to tell you that I'm a terrible person who destroyed your son's life over one comment about money. Linda's face was red now, but I couldn't tell if it was from anger or embarrassment. Still, marriage is about supporting each other through difficult times. And I did support him, I said, my voice hardening. For years, I supported him through job loss, through his decision to go freelance, through his gaming obsession. I supported him financially, emotionally, practically. I cooked his meals, cleaned our home, paid our bills, and never complained. Do you know what I got in return? Neither of them answered. I got called a gold digger. I got accused of living off him when the exact opposite was true. I got treated like I was the problem when I was the only one holding our marriage together. So yes, Linda, I divorced him, and I don't feel 1 ounce of remorse about it. He's your son, so you're going to defend him no matter what. But the facts are the facts. Derek is an adult who chose to stop contributing to his own household. He chose to prioritize gaming over employment. He chose to let me carry the financial burden alone. Those were his choices, and he's facing the consequences of them now. Tom cleared his throat. Caroline, I owe you an apology. Linda and we didn't know the full situation. Derek told us you'd had a disagreement about finances, but he never mentioned the extent of it. Most financial abusers don't advertise what they're doing, I said quietly. They rewrite the narrative to make themselves the victim. Financial abuse? Linda repeated, as if the words were foreign. Yes, when one partner deliberately contributes nothing, while the other works themselves to exhaustion to keep the household running, that's financial abuse. When someone takes advantage of their partner's goodwill and resources while giving nothing in return, that's abuse. When someone calls their partner a gold digger for finally setting boundaries after years of exploitation, that's abuse. Linda sank into one of the waiting area chairs. She looked genuinely shocked, as if this reality check had physically staggered her. I raised him better than that, she said, more to herself than to us. Maybe you did, I said, less harshly. But somewhere along the way, Derek learned that he could get away with not trying because someone would always catch him. First you, then me. And now he's learning what happens when that safety net disappears. Tom nodded slowly. You're right. We did enable him. Even now, Linda calls him every day, sends him money for groceries. I wasn't surprised. That's your choice, but it's not mine anymore. We stood in awkward silence for a moment. Finally, Linda looked up at me with something that might have been respect. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. For what I said when you called about the funeral, for what I said just now, for not seeing what was really happening in your marriage. It wasn't a complete apology, and it didn't change anything, but it was more than I'd expected. Thank you for saying that. Can I ask, Tom said hesitantly, how is he really doing? Derek doesn't tell us much. I thought about the text Derek had sent months ago, about his job and roommates and counseling. Last I heard, he got a job and moved in with roommates. He's going to counseling. He seems to be taking steps in the right direction. But you're not taking him back, Linda said. It wasn't a question. No, I confirmed. That ship has sailed, but I hope he continues to grow and becomes someone better for the next person in his life. Tom nodded. That's more generous than he deserves from you. They left shortly after, heading into the dining room for their reservation. I returned to my table, where my colleagues were pretending they hadn't been watching the entire exchange. Everything okay? Jennifer asked carefully. Everything's fine, I said, picking up my wine glass. Just closing some old chapters. The evening continued, the awkward moment fading into laughter and celebration. But as I sat there with my colleagues, successful and independent and happy, I realized something important. I wasn't angry anymore. The confrontation with Linda hadn't stirred up old resentment or hurt. It had simply been a moment of truth-telling, clear and clean. Derek's parents knew the truth now. They couldn't unsee it or unknow it, and that felt like its own kind of justice. 2 weeks later, something else happened that brought everything full circle. I was at my favorite coffee shop on a Saturday morning when I ran into someone I never expected to see. Brittany, one of Derek's gaming friends. Well, calling her a friend might have been generous. She was one of the women Derek streamed with sometimes. Someone whose username I'd seen pop up on his screen countless times during our marriage. She recognized me immediately. Caroline? Oh my god, hi! I remembered Brittany from a few awkward hangouts Derek had insisted on during our marriage. She'd always seemed nice enough, if a bit oblivious to how uncomfortable I was being the only non-gamer in the room. Hi, Brittany, I said politely. I heard about you and Derek, she said, sliding uninvited into the seat across from me. That's so crazy. You guys seemed so solid. Things aren't always what they seem, I said diplomatically. Yeah, I guess not. She leaned in conspiratorially. Can I tell you something? Derek's been trying to date me. I blinked, surprised by her bluntness. Oh? Yeah. He reached out like 2 months after your divorce. We have so much in common, and I've always thought you were special. She rolled her eyes. I told him no way. May I ask why? I was genuinely curious. Because I saw how he treated you, Brittany said simply. I was at your place a few times, remember? I saw you come home from work exhausted and immediately start cooking dinner while Derek stayed glued to his screen. I saw you cleaning up after him, managing everything, basically being his mother, and he just took it all for granted. I was stunned. I didn't think anyone noticed. Oh, we noticed, Brittany said. All of us in the gaming group noticed. We used to talk about it, how Derek had landed this amazing wife who had her shit together and supported his dreams, and how he just treated it like it was owed to him. Some of the guys thought it was great, like Derek had won the lottery, but most of us, especially the women, thought it was messed up. Why didn't anyone say anything? I asked. Brittany shrugged uncomfortably. Not our place, you know. And honestly, Derek would get really defensive if anyone even hinted that he should maybe contribute more or get a real job. He'd go on these rants about how streaming was real work and how society doesn't understand entrepreneurship and all this other stuff. After a while, we just stopped bringing it up. He's working now, I said. An actual job. I heard, Brittany nodded. And good for him. But that doesn't mean I'm going to date someone who thinks it's okay to live off their partner while contributing nothing. That's not a partner, that's a dependent. Her words hit me hard. This woman, who I'd always thought of as part of Derek's gaming world, had seen the truth of my marriage clearly. She'd watched me struggle and recognized it for what it was. Thank you, I said quietly, for noticing, for not falling for his story about how I was the problem. Please, Brittany said. Anyone with eyes could see you were holding that marriage together. I'm just glad you finally left. You deserve someone who actually sees your worth. After she left, I sat in the coffee shop for a long time, nursing my cold coffee and thinking about perspective. Derek had probably told his friends that I was unreasonable, that I'd left him over money, that I was the gold digger he'd accused me of being, but at least some of them had seen through it. They'd witnessed the imbalance and recognized it for what it was. That night, I got a text from an unknown number. When I opened it, I saw a screenshot of a conversation. The message with the screenshot read, "Thought you should see this. Brittany." The screenshot was from a gaming Discord server. Derek had posted a long rant about how some women only want your money and how marriage is a trap where men get exploited. The irony was so thick I almost choked on it. But what caught my attention was the response thread. Multiple people pushing back, calling out his hypocrisy, pointing out that he'd been the one living off his wife's income. Someone named GamerGirl2000 had written, "Dude, we all saw how Caroline supported you for years while you did nothing. Maybe reflect on that instead of blaming her." Derek had left the server shortly after. I texted Brittany back. "Thank you for showing me this. It helps to know the truth is getting out there." She replied immediately, "The truth has a way of coming out eventually. He can't rewrite history when there were dozens of witnesses to what really happened." She was right. Derek could tell whatever story he wanted about our marriage, but the people who'd actually witnessed it knew the truth. His gaming friends knew, his parents now knew, and most importantly, I knew. The holiday season approached, and with it came the typical family gatherings I'd been dreading. My first Christmas as a divorced woman, my first Thanksgiving alone, but Maya, as always, had my back. "You're coming to my family's Thanksgiving," she announced in early November. No arguments. "I don't want to intrude," I protested weakly. "You're not intruding. My mom specifically asked me to invite you. She remembers you from college and wants to see how you're doing." Maya's family Thanksgiving was everything mine hadn't been in years. Warm, warm, chaotic, full of laughter and genuine affection. Her mother hugged me tightly when I arrived and whispered, "I'm proud of you for choosing yourself." Over dinner, surrounded by people who barely knew me but welcomed me anyway, I felt something shift. This was what family could be. People who showed up, who cared, who didn't keep score of who contributed what. During dessert, Maya's aunt asked about my plans for the future. Any New Year's resolutions? "I want to buy a place," I said, surprising myself by saying it out loud. "Not rent, but actually buy. A condo or a small house. Something that's mine." "That's wonderful," Maya's mother said. "Do you have a down payment saved?" "Getting there," I said. "Another year of saving, and I should have enough." What I didn't mention was that if Derek hadn't drained $68,000 from our marriage, I could have bought a place already. But I refused to dwell on that. The money was gone, but I was free. That was worth more than any down payment. After dinner, Maya and I were doing dishes together when her younger sister Emma came into the kitchen. Emma was 23, recently graduated, and dating someone seriously. "Caroline," she said hesitantly, "can I ask you something about your marriage?" "Sure," I said, setting down the dish I was drying. "How did you know it was time to leave? Like, what was the final straw?" I thought about how to answer honestly without projecting my experience onto her situation. For me, it was when I realized I'd spent 7 years trying to be enough for someone who was never going to appreciate what I gave. When he called me a gold digger after all I'd sacrificed, it was like a light turning on. I saw that it didn't matter what I did or how much I gave. He was never going to value it. That's when I knew. Emma nodded slowly. "I think I needed to hear that. Thank you." After she left, Maya looked at me thoughtfully. "You're helping people, you know, just by being honest about what you went through." "I hope so," I said. "If my disaster of a marriage can help someone else avoid the same mistakes, maybe it wasn't completely wasted time." "It wasn't wasted time," Maya said firmly. "It taught you what you won't accept. That's valuable." As December arrived and the year drew to a close, I found myself reflecting on everything that had changed. A year ago, I'd been trapped in a marriage that was slowly drowning me. I'd been exhausted, invisible, taken for granted. I'd been working myself to the bone to support a man who thought I was the problem. Now I was free. I was building savings. I was advancing in my career. I had friends who actually showed up for me. I had an apartment that felt like home. I had peace. The divorce had cost me $68,000 and 7 years of my life, but it had given me back something infinitely more valuable, myself. And as I sat in my apartment on New Year's Eve, alone but not lonely, I raised a glass to the woman I'd become, the one who knew her worth, the one who wouldn't settle for less than she deserved, the one who'd walked away from financial abuse and built a better life from scratch. "To new beginnings," I said to my empty apartment, and meant it with every fiber of my being. Spring arrived with unexpected warmth, and with it came the moment I'd been working towards since my divorce. I was sitting in a real estate agent's office, signing papers to purchase my first home. Not a rental, not a shared space, but a 2-bedroom condo with a balcony overlooking a small park. The down payment came entirely from my own savings, built up over 18 months of living alone and not supporting anyone but myself. $25,000 that represented freedom and security and everything I'd sacrificed during my marriage. "Congratulations, Ms. Brooks," the agent said, handing me the keys. "You're officially a homeowner." I held those keys in my hand and felt a surge of pride so intense it brought tears to my eyes. This was mine. I'd earned it. No one could take it from me. Moving day was chaotic but joyful. Maya showed up with her boyfriend and a U-Haul. Jennifer and a few other colleagues came with pizza and wine. Even Brittany appeared, having somehow heard through the grapevine that I was moving. "I brought you a housewarming gift," she said, handing me a wrapped package. Inside was a beautiful wooden sign that read, "She believed she could, so she did." "It's perfect," I said, hugging her. "Thank you." As we unpacked boxes and arranged furniture, I found myself laughing more than I had in years. These people, this community I'd built after my divorce, they were my real family. They showed up, they cared, they celebrated my victories without jealousy or resentment. That evening, after everyone had left and I was alone in my new home, I poured myself a glass of wine and stood on my balcony watching the sunset. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Caroline, it's Derek. I heard you bought a place. Congratulations. I know we don't talk anymore, but I wanted you to know I'm proud of you. You deserve all the good things coming your way. I hope you can forgive me someday for how badly I failed you." I read the message twice, then 3 times. A year ago, these words would have meant everything to me. They would have filled the empty space where Derek's appreciation should have been. Now, they meant nothing. I didn't respond. I didn't block the number either. I simply set my phone down and went back to watching the sunset, letting his words dissolve into irrelevance. 2 months later, something happened that I never could have predicted. I was at a work conference, one of those mandatory networking events where everyone stands around making small talk and exchanging business cards. I was halfway through a conversation about tax code updates when a voice behind me said, "Caroline Brooks?" I turned to find a man about my age, attractive in a professional sort of way, with kind eyes and a genuine smile. He looked vaguely familiar, but I couldn't place him. "I'm sorry," I said. "Do we know each other?" "Marcus Chen," he said, extending his hand. "We went to college together. Different majors, but we had that elective on financial ethics together. You probably don't remember me." But I did remember, suddenly. Marcus had been the quiet guy who always had thoughtful answers to the professor's questions. We'd been paired together for one project and had gotten a perfect score. "I do remember," I said, shaking his hand. "You're Brandon's brother." His expression clouded slightly. "Yes, small world. My brother mentioned that he represented your ex-husband in your divorce. That must have been awkward," I said carefully. "Brandon felt terrible about it," Marcus said. "He told me afterward that he'd never seen such a clear-cut case of financial exploitation. He said your documentation was impressive." I laughed despite myself. That's one word for it. Therapeutic is another. We talked for another 20 minutes, and I was surprised by how easy the conversation flowed. Marcus worked in corporate finance, had recently moved back to the city after 5 years in Seattle, and seemed genuinely interested in my work. "Can I ask you something personal?" he said as the networking event was winding down. "Sure," I replied cautiously. "Would you like to have dinner sometime? Just dinner, no pressure. I'd really like to catch up more, and I promise I won't mention your divorce or my brother's involvement in it." I hesitated. The truth was, I hadn't seriously dated anyone since my divorce. I'd gone on a few coffee dates, nothing substantial. The idea of opening myself up to another relationship, to the possibility of being hurt again, was terrifying. But looking at Marcus, at his open expression and genuine interest, I realized something. Derek had taken 7 years of my life. He didn't get to take my future too. "I'd like that," I said. Our first date was at a small bistro downtown. Marcus arrived exactly on time, held doors, asked questions about my life, and actually listened to the answers. When the check came, he reached for it, but I insisted we split it. "I appreciate the gesture," I said, "but I prefer to pay my own way." He studied me for a moment, and I could see understanding dawn in his eyes. "Your ex really did a number on you, didn't he? Is it that obvious?" "Only to someone paying attention," Marcus said gently. "For what it's worth, I think financial independence is attractive, and I respect that you want to establish equality from the start." We dated slowly, carefully. Marcus never pushed, never assumed, never took me for granted. He had his own career, his own apartment, his own life. He didn't need me to take care of him or fix him or support him. He wanted to spend time with me because he enjoyed my company, not because I could provide something he lacked. 3 months into dating, Marcus met Maya for the first time. I'd been nervous about it, knowing that Maya's approval meant everything to me. But within 30 minutes, Maya pulled me aside and whispered, "This one's different. This one sees you." She was right. Marcus saw me in ways Derek never had. He noticed when I was tired and suggested we stay in instead of going out. He remembered details I mentioned in passing. He celebrated my work victories without making them about himself. He contributed equally to every aspect of our relationship, from finances to emotional labor to planning dates. 6 months after we started dating, Marcus met my parents for the first time. My relationship with them had been complicated since the divorce. They'd liked Derek, had thought I was being hasty divorcing him. But over time, as the full story emerged, they'd come to understand. At dinner, my mother asked Marcus what he did for a living, that familiar assessment in her eyes. "I work in corporate finance," Marcus said easily. "But more importantly, I make your daughter laugh." That seems like the more relevant qualification. My mother blinked, surprised, then smiled. A real smile. "That's a good answer." Later, as we were leaving, my father pulled me aside. "This one's better," he said simply. "He sees your worth." As summer turned to fall, my life had transformed in ways I couldn't have imagined 2 years earlier. I had my own home, a thriving career, a healthy relationship with someone who respected me, and a community of people who genuinely cared about my well-being. One October evening, Marcus and I were making dinner together in my kitchen when my phone rang. It was Patricia, my divorce lawyer. I hadn't heard from her since the divorce was finalized. "Caroline," she said when I answered, "I hope you don't mind me calling. I have some news that I thought you'd want to hear." "Of course, what is it?" "Derek's mother, Linda, called me today. She wanted to pass along a message. Derek is getting married." I felt Marcus's eyes on me, watching my reaction. I took a breath, processed the information, and felt nothing. No jealousy, no regret, no anger, just a mild curiosity. "Good for him," I said honestly. "I hope he treats her better than he treated me." According to Linda, his fiancé is a successful software engineer who makes substantially more than Derek does. "Linda wanted you to know that they have a prenuptial agreement that protects her assets, and that Derek is contributing equally to all household expenses." She said, and I quote, "You taught our son a lesson he needed to learn. We hope he's finally learned it." After I hung up, Marcus turned to me. "Your ex is getting remarried?" "Apparently," I said, returning to chopping vegetables. "And according to his mother, he's actually being a functional partner this time. How do you feel about that?" Marcus asked carefully. I thought about it honestly. I feel relieved. Relieved that some other woman is benefiting from the growth I paid $68,000 for him to achieve. Relieved relieved that I'm not stuck in a marriage with someone who took me for granted. And mostly, I feel grateful that I'm here in my own home with someone who values me instead of still trapped in that relationship, hoping things would change. Marcus pulled me into a hug. That's a healthy response. Therapy helps, I said with a laugh. That night, lying in bed next to Marcus, I thought about the journey that had brought me here, the years of sacrifice, the humiliation of being called a gold digger, the pain of divorce, the hard work of rebuilding. All of it had led to this moment, to this life I'd created for myself. Derek was getting married again. Good. Maybe he'd actually appreciate what he had this time. Maybe he'd learned from losing me. Maybe he'd become a better person. But none of that was my concern anymore. My concern was the life I was building, the person I'd become, the future spread out before me filled with possibility. I thought about the woman I'd been 2 years ago, standing in her kitchen being called a gold digger by a man she'd supported for 7 years. I wished I could go back and tell her what I knew now, that walking away wouldn't destroy her, it would save her, that the strength she'd need to leave was already inside her, waiting to be recognized, that on the other side of that fear was a life so much better than anything she'd imagined. But I couldn't go back. I could only move forward, carrying the lessons I'd learned, grateful for the wisdom that came at such a high price. And as I drifted off to sleep, secure in my own home with a partner who valued me and a future I'd built with my own hands, I felt something I hadn't felt in 7 years of marriage: complete, peaceful contentment. 2 years had passed since my divorce was finalized. I was sitting in my home office on a Saturday morning, the spring sunlight streaming through the window, reviewing financial reports for a major client. My consulting business, which I'd started 6 months ago, was thriving beyond my expectations. Leaving my corporate job had been scary, but Marcus had encouraged me. "You're brilliant at what you do," he'd said. "Why make someone else rich when you could build something for yourself?" He'd been right. Within 3 months of launching Brooks Financial Consulting, I had more clients than I could handle. Within 6 months, I'd hired 2 junior accountants to help with the workload. My income had doubled from what I'd made at my old job, and I was finally building the kind of wealth I'd only dreamed about during my marriage. My phone rang. It was Jennifer from my old office. "Caroline, you'll never believe who just walked into our building for a meeting," she said, her voice pitched with excitement. "Who?" "Your ex, Derek. He's here with some startup pitch looking for accounting services." I felt a flutter of something. Curiosity maybe, but nothing more. "How does he look?" "Honestly, good. Professional. He's wearing an actual suit. He seems put together." "That's great," I said, and meant it. He was always capable of more. He just needed the right motivation. "You're not upset that he might end up being our client?" "Not at all. That part of my life is over. If he's actually building something legitimate, good for him." After we hung up, I thought about Derek, about the man he'd been when we were married and the man he'd apparently become. His new wife had clearly set boundaries he had to respect. She'd protected her assets, demanded equality, and from what Linda had told Patricia, Derek had risen to meet those expectations. Good for her. And honestly, good for him too. But mostly, good for me. Because if I'd stayed, if I'd continued to enable him, he never would have grown, and I would have continued to shrink. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is stop saving them from the consequences of their own choices. That afternoon, Marcus and I drove to Maya's house for a barbecue. Her backyard was filled with friends, laughter, and the smell of grilled food. I was helping Maya set out dishes when her sister Emma approached us. "Caroline," Emma said, "I wanted to thank you." "For what?" "Remember that conversation we had at Thanksgiving 2 years ago about knowing when to leave?" I nodded. "I broke up with my boyfriend a month after that. I'd been making excuses for him for 2 years, covering his share of rent, supporting his music career while he contributed nothing. Your story made me see I was heading down the same path you'd been on. I left, and it was the best decision I ever made." She gestured across the yard to a man I didn't recognize. "That's James. We've been together for a year. He has his own career, pays his own way, treats me like an equal partner. I never would have found him if I'd stayed stuck with someone who saw me as an ATM." I hugged her tightly. "I'm so proud of you for choosing yourself. You showed me it was possible," she said. "You showed me what strength looks like." As the afternoon went on, I found myself in conversations with various people about relationships, boundaries, and self-worth. It seemed my story had spread through Maya's friend network, and several women wanted to share how it had impacted them. One woman, Sarah, told me about finally leaving her husband who hadn't worked in 5 years. Another, Jessica, talked about establishing financial boundaries with her boyfriend who'd been draining her savings. A third, Amanda, thanked me for helping her recognize emotional manipulation before it progressed to financial abuse. "You're becoming a cautionary tale in the best way," Maya said with a laugh as we cleaned up together. The woman who loved herself enough to leave. That evening, Marcus and I were back at my place, relaxing on the couch after the long day. He was reading while I scrolled through my phone, catching up on emails. "Caroline," he said suddenly, setting down his book, "I have something I want to talk to you about." My heart jumped. His tone was serious but not worried. "Okay, I've been thinking about our future. We've been together almost 2 years now. I'm ready for the next step, but I want to make sure we're on the same page about some important things first." I set down my phone, giving him my full attention. "I never want you to feel the way you felt in your marriage to Derek," Marcus continued. "I never want you to question whether you're valued or appreciated. So before I ask what I want to ask, I need you to know some things." He pulled out a folder from his bag. Inside were financial documents, bank statements, investment accounts, retirement funds. This is everything I have, he said. Full financial transparency. I make $98,000 a year. I have $42,000 in savings, $75,000 in my 401k, and no debt except my car payment, which will be paid off in 8 months. My credit score is 785. I'm showing you this because I want you to know exactly who you'd be building a life with. I was stunned. No one had ever done anything like this for me. Marcus, I'm not finished, he said gently. I've also drafted a post-nuptial agreement. If we get married, everything we bring into the marriage stays ours individually. Everything we build together gets split 50-50 if things don't work out. I contribute to household expenses based on the percentage of total household income I earn, which means if you make more than me, I pay less, and vice versa. All of this is designed to protect you and make sure you never feel taken advantage of again. He looked at me with such sincerity, it made my chest ache. I don't need you to support me, Caroline. I want to build a life with you as equal partners. And if you're willing to take that risk again after everything you've been through, I promise you I'll spend every day proving I'm worth that trust. I was crying now, but they were good tears, healing tears. Are you asking me to marry you? Not yet, he said with a small smile. First, I want you to review these documents. Have Patricia look at the post-nup agreement. Make sure you're comfortable with everything. Take all the time you need. When you're ready, if you're ready, then I'll ask properly. I looked at this man who understood me so completely, who valued me so thoroughly, who saw my worth and protected it as fiercely as I'd learned to protect it myself. I don't need time, I said. Yes. Yes to reviewing the documents, or yes to the question I haven't asked yet? Both, I said, laughing through my tears. Yes to all of it. Yes to building a life with someone who sees me as an equal partner. Yes to the future we're going to create together. Marcus pulled me into his arms, and I felt safe in a way I never had during my 7 years of marriage to Derek. This was what partnership was supposed to feel like. Not one person giving everything while the other took. Not sacrifice that went unacknowledged, but genuine mutual respect and effort. 6 months later, Marcus and I got married in a small ceremony at Maya's parents' house. The wedding was nothing like my first one. This time, it was filled with people who actually showed up for me, who celebrated without conditions, who understood what this marriage represented. Patricia came, which felt fitting. So did Brittany and several other friends from my divorce recovery support group. Jennifer and my colleagues, Emma and her boyfriend James. Even Linda and Tom came, which surprised me until Linda pulled me aside before the ceremony. Thank you, she said quietly, for showing Derek what real partnership looks like. His new marriage is healthy because of the lessons you taught him. I know it cost you a lot to teach those lessons, and I'm sorry for my part in enabling him for so long. I hope he's happy, I said honestly. I hope he continues to grow. He is, Linda said, and so are you. I can see it in your face. This is different. This is right. She was correct. Everything about this marriage was different. Marcus and I had written our own vows, promises of equality and respect, and genuine partnership. When we exchanged rings, I felt joy without fear, hope without anxiety, love without the weight of unacknowledged sacrifice. At the reception, Maya gave a toast that had everyone laughing and crying. Caroline taught me something important, she said. She taught me that walking away from what's destroying you isn't giving up. It's choosing yourself. It's recognizing your own worth when nobody else will. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is admit that you deserve better and then go build that better life with your own hands. She raised her glass to Caroline, who turned $68,000 and 7 years of pain into wisdom, strength, and this beautiful second chance. May your new marriage be everything your first one wasn't. As everyone cheered and drank, I looked around at the life I'd built, the home I owned, the business I'd created, the friends who'd supported me, the man who valued me, the future stretching out before us, full of possibility and equal partnership. Derek had called me a gold digger, but the truth was, I'd been mining for gold in the wrong place. I'd been digging through years of financial abuse, searching for appreciation that would never come, trying to extract value from someone who had none to give. The real gold had been inside me all along, my strength, my intelligence, my capacity to love and build and create. I just had to stop giving it away to someone who couldn't see its worth. Now I was sharing it with someone who treasured it. As Marcus and I danced our first dance as a married couple, I thought about the woman I'd been 3 years ago, standing in her kitchen stirring pasta sauce while her husband called her a gold digger. I wanted to tell her so many things. I wanted to tell her she was stronger than she knew, that the life she'd build after leaving would be better than anything she could imagine, that the $68,000 she'd lost wasn't wasted. It was tuition for the most important education she'd ever receive. That divorce wasn't failure, it was choosing herself. That she deserved so much more than she was settling for. But mostly I wanted to tell her this. The best revenge isn't winning. It's building such a good life that you stop caring about revenge at all. Have you ever had to walk away from someone who took you for granted? Have you ever had to rebuild your life from scratch after financial abuse? Your story matters, and you're stronger than you think. If this story resonated with you, share your thoughts in the comments. And remember, choosing yourself isn't selfish, it's survival. Thank you for listening to my journey. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories about finding strength in difficult situations. Your support means everything, and I'm grateful to everyone who stayed until the end.